Alright, we are good to go. So, that's where you guys left off. What are you doing?
Alright, well, we still need to stop the building from sinking, right?
Yeah,
It's still moving.
the lab is still slowly sinking. You have you're close. You have probably 12 minutes left.
Okay. And just to recap, can I look around and see if there's anything of note in the room aside from the things already described? Because we just finished that fight, right?
Yeah, so
Okay.
within less than a minute before since the Legion kind of broke apart. Looking around, there is the massive chunks of that crystal pillar that the Marine robot had been stuck inside. She is kind of cradling Oliver's alive but unmoving body, and trying to kind of settle him. Ophelia is standing beside you, but taking very thorough note of Maureen. She obviously intends to be taking Maureen with her to go return back to Crow's Thicket. Faith is kind of buzzing around a little bit, and like, again, if she had hands, she would be wringing them over Oliver. But looking around, though, as far as objects go, just chunks of crystal everywhere. There's a mat, like the room is just destroyed. Where the Legion was jumping around, there are massive kind of crunched parts in the floor. There is a section of floor that he pulled and ripped up to make a wall for himself. There is a series, like a long tube of ducts for about 30 feet that were ripped off of the ceiling and are crashed to the floor. The room's just completely torn to pieces. So.
Was there anything of note left behind where his body would have been? I know he kind of just...
There is nothing left behind there.
Okay.
There's no residual leavings. There's no corpse. There's no blood. No nothing. It was a creature made up entirely of spirits that had come out through the broken mirror. There are chunks of that mirror, so there's a big kind of hula hoop of platinum, as well as a bunch of chunks of pale sapphire that are all over the floor where you guys broke the mirror on the south side of the room. And then you have the Cauticus ring, which is not a finger ring, but is like a disc of stone with a hole in the center, like a smooth, round, like a salt lick with a hole in the middle, kind of, just a chunk of stone, basically. And then you have this mechanical disc of interlocking rings that Maureen also had.
Okay, so were we thinking that, to the team, were we thinking that we had to get Marine out of here to stop it, or do you think we had need to mess with...
When you asked that, at the end of the last session, I believe, and Ango warned you that was probably not going to have any effect on it. At the time, you had said something about using the ring, and Carrie gave you a very angry stare, basically. She has a very sour look on her face. Sourest you've ever seen from her, in fact. She seems resigned to that possibility, that it may be a lesser evil, and that if using it keeps the lab from essentially ending all life on the planet, then that may be the way to go. But she is obviously very hesitant about this, and her hand is very tightly gripped on the short sword at her hip.
Desperate times call for desperate measures. Do we know of a possible way to maybe create another one of those portals underneath this lab? Now I'm thinking, what portals?
You would be the most prepared or capable to do such a thing, and it is far outside the realm of your capability. To be able to teleport the entire lab is not realistic.
So
Assuming that's what you meant.
Yeah, we haven't really figured out, because we have these rings that we see things come out of. Is there a way that we can create one of these rings using the technology in this lab and all this weird stuff that's happening underneath the lab, if you know what I'm saying?
If we boost the power with the ring, maybe.
Well, I mean, those portals that you were seeing were something coming specifically from Maureen, and they weren't from her as much as they were from the other spirits that were inside of her, the things that became Legion, essentially.
What happens if we... would the mirror still work? Maybe?
You shattered it.
Piece together? Yeah, it wouldn't be like... we wouldn't be able to get it back together enough.
No, from the way that Oliver described it, remember chipping or breaking, the mirrors have to be grown into a perfect shape. So he was growing them by taking a bowl of water, a perfect sized bowl of water, and transmuting that water into the different gems that he needed. So the chips of it, putting it back together wouldn't work. You kind of can gather that based on what he told you.
Have we looked
Well-
around to see if there's any way to boost power to get this thing back up in the air? I mean, I'm just thinking of any ways to stop this drop.
Oliver turned off all of the kind of non-essential systems already, and used as much power as he could to give you guys another, at the time it was 40 minutes, well, total of 40 minutes, which you guys have, used up most of the time by now, crawling through the elevator and all that kind of stuff, leaving you with about 10 minutes at this point now, as you guys are kind of standing there trying to figure out what to do.
Is there any? Can we get everybody else out of here with us? And is there any reason why we couldn't just blow the fucking lab to pieces before it crashes into the moon and get the hell out of there? Is there any reason why we have to save the lab?
You're saying this out loud, right?
Yeah, I'm talking to the team.
Okay. If you're saying this out loud, Ango replies over the stones. He says, "Guys, I mean, if we blow this place up, the shards of that are just going to explode and end up hitting down here too.
Okay.
I mean, we would create, haven't you guys ever seen Armageddon? Where they blow up that one and then it just becomes a bunch. That's the
That's
problem.
bad fucking. All right, then.
Might not have a choice. Just have to try to use it.
I don't think we have any other choice.
Kind of running out of time here.
We have what, 10 minutes left after all this talking?
9 minutes.
So, all right. All right. Who's dumb enough to do it? Me.
You have the ring.
Of course it's me. It's always me. I'm the one that got the crystal on my hand, so I'm not paying attention.
All right. Well, okay. So I guess tell me, you're holding it. It is in your right hand at the moment, in the same hand that already has the crystallization in the center of it. So tell me exactly what you're trying to do.
I don't. I mean, well, she was holding one in each hand. What if I hold one of each of the items in each hand that we found?
Okay. All right. So you've got the Cauticus ring in your right hand and the kind of mechanical disc thing in your left.
And not getting them very close to each other yet.
Okay.
Can I use a perception skill or some type of skill to see if we can I can help figure out what to do?
Sure. Yeah. Roll. Let's say roll Arcana and with advantage. Don't worry about why. Just roll it with advantage.
All right, give me a sec here.
Okay. You didn't need to roll that in the tower, but you rolled a 19 plus 9, so a total of 28, which is a pretty insane roll. So with that, you immediately, as you're thinking about this, and as soon as the kind of topic comes up, basically of Ketis using the Cauticus ring, you immediately think to yourself, well, that's not going to work. I mean, you can't use it because you're inside these null crown suits. If this thing is the embodiment of transmutation magic, and these null crowns prevent transmutation magic, period. So you're going to have to take off the null crown to use it.
All right. We're looking down around me. Is there any? The crystals are on everything here still, right?
Crystals are also on the thing you're holding in your hand, both of them.
Okay.
So yeah, but I mean, the room is covered in them. There's no avoiding that, and that even if you could find a spot where your feet weren't touching it, there's enough of them floating in the air that as you pass through, remember the kind of crinkling sounds you hear by your ears as you're walking. There's enough of it in the air that you suspect it would probably be able to infect you the same way. Now, if it's done fast enough, maybe it's something you are able to jam your hand against it the way you kind of smacked the wall plate when you got the first part of it into your hand in the first place. It's kind of up to you there. But I mean, Peter, I assume. So Peter put that together. He didn't tell you. So Ketis, you don't necessarily know what Peter just thought. So I mean, can I assume that portion of it that Peter, you would have told him, hey, if you're gonna have to use it, you're gonna have to take it off.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and let him know what's going on. But while we're doing that too, I'm thinking there's no way that I can use a mage hand for this action, could I? This has to actually be a physical thing, because if we're casting
I
a
have
spell,
a mage hand too, so
Yeah.
one of each of ours, putting them together.
It doesn't work that way. Yeah, Mage Hand can't use magical items. You can't. There's a lot of restrictions to it. There's a specific variation that arcane tricksters have that can turn it invisible and make it do things like let it pick pockets and that kind of stuff. But otherwise, the Mage Hand itself doesn't have the caster's capabilities. meaning that it can't use the spells that you have or things like that. You can use it for very limited things. I think the Arcane Trickster version can use it for touch spells at range, that kind of stuff, but a regular Mage Hand doesn't, and neither one of them can use magic items, certainly not of this caliber. I mean, this thing is the magic item. I mean, there are 7 of them, but they're all, you know, about as focused of a magic item as you could have.
With the knowledge that Peter has right now about what's about to go down, would it be beneficial for Peter to cast a spell as opposed to anyone else?
The way that magic item works, they're not necessarily, and this is something Peter would know, they're not necessarily increased or diminished by the user as long as the user is capable of doing it in the first place, basically. So there's kind of a minimum barrier entry, let's say, but after that, there isn't a huge difference in, you know, somebody of your capabilities using it versus somebody of Ketis's, for example. You're both arcane casters of the same level. His style is a little different. His power is given by a patron rather than developed, you know, with study, but they're similar otherwise. Seven minutes.
Looks like we got to do it.
What about Maureen? Because she used it the first time, and did I hear you correctly when you said that there were other spirits in that made her open up the other portals and bring more through?
Yeah. So when you guys, I went over this somewhat briefly, but basically, when she was trying to shake them off, as soon as the Legion kind of cracked open the pillar and she fell out of it, she kind of shook off the other spirits, and they whisked off of her and went back into the Legion. And she kind of shook out the other ones that were kind of controlling her and making her do the other stuff, which is, remember Legion when he first popped out said thank you and so on to her. So anyways, yeah, they were inside of her, but it's just her now.
Maybe she could try it. She already used it once. And she doesn't have... We wouldn't have to worry about her turning into crystal.
Yeah, true.
She, as you guys are saying this, she kind of realizes the intensity of the situation and is wanting to hurry because her son, although comatose, is still, you know, would still die in this if this isn't solved in the next 7, let's still say 7 minutes for the moment. She says, guys, I mean, I'm not any kind of mage. I'm a scientist. I don't know how that stuff came out of me. It wasn't me.
Alright, well, I guess I'm gonna have to give it a try then.
When you're kind of resigning yourself to this, Carrie's standing right beside you. She says, look, I don't want to do this. I don't know that this is the best idea, but it may be our only choice. But look, I mean, I can't have you crystallized either. I mean, look, I know we've only been around for like 6 months, but I consider you a friend, and I don't want you dying either. So, look, I mean, we'll move over here. She kind of points over to the area that has the least amount of crystallization. She says, you do that, you take the crown off, you do whatever you need to do, and you put that crown right back on. And if that hand starts to turn, I'll take it off. Like, I don't want to do this. I know this is an uncomfortable thing to even suggest, but I mean, it's better than losing your whole body, right? Or losing an arm or whatever else. If I just take it off as soon as this happens, maybe we can save the rest of you.
Alright, whatever we gotta do.
So you guys kind of make your way over there. So you were holding the thing in your right hand, which is the one that is already kind of a little bit infected, because you said it was your right hand that you smacked the thing with, remember? The button to open the door. So your right hand is the one you're going to use?
Yeah.
All right. You're gonna go all Kingslayer, Game of Thrones on this and not have a right hand anymore?
Guess so. I'm gonna get a Mega Man arm put on there to do it.
Faith can show you. All right, so then as you guys are stepping over to go do that, you see that Ophelia stays there with Maureen, and is... so I mentioned this last session too, but again, this is near the end of the session where you guys' network was messing up. She is actually somewhat somber, and for Ophelia, she's always almost indifferent to what her job is, essentially, and ferrying, you know, people back and forth to death. Like even in Phandalin, when Phandalin was burning, you know, the people that she's carrying back and forth are blackened and in horrible pain. She was still cheery and she was tired, but she was cheery, and, you know, seemingly indifferent to the kind of terrible situation around her. In this case, she actually seems a little somber and respectful, and kind of careful about how she's going about this, basically to presumably, which you can kind of piece together, that she's going to be taking Maureen back to Crow's Thicket. So anyways, Maureen is still there, kind of cradling Oliver, and Ophelia stays with her as you guys kind of make your way over to the corner. So you step over there. You're wearing the crown. You have the mechanical disc in the left hand and the caudicus ring in the right hand, and you need to take the crown off. So I guess one of them could take the crown off. What's the plan? 5 minutes.
Probably.
I guess. Yeah, go over there, crown off, put it back on.
Okay. All right. So yeah, you step over there. Then you. Holding this thing in your hand, it feels like a lump of stone. It doesn't feel like, I mean, you have magic items, you've used them before, you've bought stuff from Fantasy Costco, things like that. Like you're used to how it should feel, and this thing feels as inert as a lump of of river stone that you just dig up from skipping rocks and things like that. Especially right now when you have the caudicus ring off. But roll an Arcana check on Ketis and roll it with advantage. Okay. So, in as quick of a motion as you possibly can, So, who's taking the crown off? Are you taking the crown off yourself?
No, I'm gonna have my hands ready for the Eidolons, Adams.
Okay. So the
Assuming it'd be easier if somebody else did it.
The mechanical ring is not an Eidolon, and it doesn't seem like you're going to need this for that necessarily. You could put it away probably, but if you want to hold it, that's fine too. But it's not an Eidolon. It's just the caudicus ring.
I'm just gonna put that away then.
Okay.
The second item.
Okay, and then you can take the crown off yourself?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so you...
I'll have it.
Yeah, so you, as quick as you can, as fast of an action as you can, you kind of have your hand up by your temple ready to go, and the other hand kind of extended out looking at this ring in your hand, and you pull the crown off of your head, and the fraction of a second that you do, you immediately feel the power in this thing, similar to the kind of power that you felt in the Vine Lash and the Hammer and the Oculus, the Firestorm Cloak, all the different ones you've picked up before. You immediately feel just the weight of this thing. Your hand is I mean, there is actually, your hand drops a couple inches just from feeling this, although the physical weight is no different. Just the power contained in this thing is immediately represented, whereas before it could have just been any random rock. But your hand dips, and although you don't know exactly how to use this thing, and really don't know really its purpose, or like, do you think or do what, you immediately feel just innately that you know how to control it. What are you telling it to do?
Telling it to stop what it's transmutating now. Because it still has this. It's still doing the same thing, making the crystals, isn't it?
It is still transmuting the crystals, but the crystals themselves are virulent. So even if you tell it to stop, those crystals are still, as soon as they touch something, are still going to continue turning other things.
Okay, I'm gonna see if to reverse it, if there's a way to.
Okay, so reverse it into what? Because the crystals kind of grew from each other. So what are you turning the crystals into? It's a transmutation. It's meant to, it's intended to be able to turn anything into anything else. So what are you turning the crystals into?
I'm just kind of just turn them into water, oxygen.
Sure.
Maybe.
All right, so you have that thought, and immediately this you've had the crown off now for half of a minute as you're kind of planning over this. So it's been a little while, and as this time is passing, you are feeling not just the weight of this, but also the little pinpricks of what's underneath it, as these things are kind of jabbing into your hand, where this stone is. The weight of it was one thing, but it wasn't just. Remember how I used to put the salt and ice thing on you? Remember that? How that feels like itty bitty needles, like a tattoo almost.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you're feeling, like these just constant pinpricks of it in your hand, and you know that that's what it's doing, but it's already kind of begun to slowly spread out, and you see the discoloration, the purplish or pinkish color rather, begin to kind of spread out from outside of the stone, but immediately as you kind of have that thought, the room around you sounds like a waterfall. It's just that everything begins to fall, but it's not just the crystals that are in the room. It's the crystals all that's surrounding this whole thing that you look outside and it almost looks like it's raining because it's just sloughing off of the sides and just looking through, falling through these tiny exterior windows, and everything is just collapsing all around you into this massive wave that actually the lab begins to sink faster because of the weight of the water being a little bit higher than these kind of aerated crystals. But everything begins to transmute all at once. It feels like it's done. What are you doing? It feels like what you've asked to be done is in the process of happening. What are you doing?
Putting my crown back on.
All right, so you snap the crown back on over your head. Immediately, the stone goes back to just feeling like a stone, and you're kind of standing there for a second. You notice that the crystallization is still continuing to spread a little bit in your hand.
All right.
It's moving slowly, but it is still spreading in your hand.
And there was no other pieces that we could pull out of my hand like before?
Even then, even the one you pulled out, it didn't stop it, it just slowed it.
Okay.
Remember, when it first got in there, it was about the size of a dime, and then 15 minutes later, it was the size of a quarter. And now it's covering your palm, basically. Your fingers and your thumb aren't covered yet, but it's about to get to your wrist.
At this moment, since everything else has turned into water, could I snatch that from him and transmute whatever's on his hand off?
You would then have the same thing.
Or is the crystal growing? So.
Yeah, I see. I could see what you're suggesting there, and that the ones on it. The thing is, it's not an immediate transition. The ones on there are still on there. Remember, it kind of slowly moving through it, but the bigger ones are affected first, I guess you could say, and that you're still surrounded by it. Not everything is turned to water yet, so you don't necessarily have very long. But Carrie's kind of sitting there, biting her lip, sword ready to go to hack that hand off. Now, in this, in fact, roll a quick, on Nivara, roll just a flat medicine. You know what, for both Peter and Nivara, roll a medicine check, actually, because both of you would be familiar with this. That's a nice roll on medicine for a 7 modifier.
Damn.
Well, both of you would be familiar with this anyways. 9 isn't quite enough to really say that necessarily the spell, although I think Nivara has this spell. Peter actually would be familiar with. There is specifically a spell for, I think it's evocation, if I remember right. It might be necromancy. It's probably necromancy, actually, that is specifically intended to be able to attach limbs and things like that. It's actually it's intended for major diseases and basically everything up to resurrection. If you're dead, it won't help, but everything up to that point, including putting bodies back together, it's called greater restoration. So you would know that this isn't necessarily, as long as you got to it fast enough, and this is kind of an emergency, get in an ambulance and get to the hospital immediately kind of a thing, you can get that limb reattached. This isn't live forever with no hand. So Peter would know that in a moment anyways, so do with that what you will. So what do you guys say or do?
I think that I'm going to communicate that with the team, if that's possible right now.
Well, I'm sure someone at the college could probably has that ability. What do you guys think? I'm saying this to the team.
Fredgy does, and you would know that he would.
Want to just do it then? It's going to hurt like a bitch, but it's not like I ain't been hit before, so.
I've got greater restoration.
Do you have a 5th level slot? You do not have a 5th level slot, though. So you can cast it right now, and you wouldn't be able to cast it within time, because you'd have to sleep and then get your slots back, and that would be too late. We're talking like within half an hour. But Fredgy, we don't necessarily know if he's available to be able to. Maybe he's burned his slots too, but he does have that magic capability, yes. And presumably others, so. All right, so, I mean, you guys are at like 3 minutes at this point, so Carrie says, you know what, yeah, I'm sorry, and she's like just looking at you going, I'm sorry, and then it just comes down. And at first you don't feel anything at all. Roll, you know what, I'm going to have her roll as an attack. Roll I'm going to say con save to see if you instinctively yank your hand away or not. Just kind of a force of will of trying to hold your hand in place. Yeah, that's fine. She rolled fine too. So you kind of just grit your teeth and you know you're not quite looking. You just kind of close your eyes. Not you know it's within where your vision would be if you opened your eyes, but you're just not looking, and you barely feel it at first, and then you look at what you did. So I guess I should have asked that. Did you still have the Conigus ring in the hand that you just whacked? Is it now dropping to the floor, or did you throw it in your bag?
Yeah, put it away.
Okay. You don't need it landing on the floor and having Carrie risking picking it up.
It just goes flying off on its own.
So she brings it through, and like I said, at first you barely feel it, and then you felt just a slight sting, and you look down, and you just got a stump there, and your hand is laying on the floor, just pouring just a spouts of blood coming out of your wrist. It'll be you take 14 damage, which you had your buffer because you'd used your false life again already, so you only have 7 HP damage, and missing a hand. At least temporarily. So that done, the space around you is continuing to just be a flood. I mean, you're now standing, your foot, or your hand rather, is underwater. You're standing in probably enough to cover your feet, so let's say probably 4 inches of water that is just covering the floor. Like stepping around is making sloshing sounds. But the place is filling with water, and it is continuing to sink, and it's sinking much faster. Faith kind of shouts out like, guys, I know you're kind of busy, but if this thing crashes down, that could still be bad. I mean, we don't necessarily want it to crash. Like, does anybody know how to pilot this thing?
No.
Because Oliver is unconscious, of course.
Try anyway. I need to grab my hand, by the way.
Yeah, pick your hand back.
I'm not gonna fucking leave that motherfucker floating around.
Throw that in your bag too.
Yeah.
Put in your inventory Akitas' hand.
Yeah.
Peter actually does know how to fly it.
Yep.
Let's
So
do this.
let's run out to where we got to go and pilot this thing.
Faith leads you around a corner. You kind of leave this giant room. Oh, Maureen's gone, by the way. Ophelia, you turn over. Maureen and Ophelia are gone, and Oliver is laying with his head against the steps, so he's not underwater yet, but he's got probably 2 more inches of this water, and he'd be starting to drown. Somebody going to carry him? Carrie refuses. She says she's just leaving him. So this is against the director's orders. The director specifically told her to bring him back. So who's doing what?
How big is he? Can I carry him?
He's not very big at all. In fact, so you guys only met him 2 weeks ago, somewhere thereabouts. But he, even from then, now Peter specifically, you've seen him like deteriorating over time, over the last 4 months or so, where he was always a little bit disheveled. He started to get like sullen face, like his skin beginning to get kind of sallow and like clammy. He's getting pale, like his eyes are sinking in, looks just unhealthy, looks like he's constantly sick, and has been worse and worse over time, over the past 4 months or so. But now he's withered away into very little. So anyways, Nivaran probably still, he's a little bit, probably about your size or a little bit bigger, so it would still be too tough for Nivara. Faith would try, but she can't really, she doesn't have the arms, or the hands really to hold him. Ketis with a stump, that's going to be rough. So I
Can I
guess
throw him over my shoulder with one arm? I don't know.
you can try. You're still pouring blood out of that wrist, though. I mean, you're gonna start fainting soon just from blood loss if you don't get that patched up somehow. Which, by the way, I mean, does Navarre any heal spells or anything left?
I've
Might as
got
well bandage that too.
4th and a 1st. But I have
Any kind of healing spell at all will stop the bleeding. It won't bring the hand
Right.
back, but
Yeah, I've got 1st level, so I can still do.
Or if not, I don't know if
Cure
Stardos
wounds.
works, but
Yeah, I can still do cure wounds.
okay. Go ahead and cast it and mark off your spell slot, and throw the heal on him so that he's got the extra HPs. But you guys, as you're kind of running along, doing this, you're kind of reaching down, and the extra effort before the spell is cast, the extra effort of leaning over and grabbing this kind of withered, comatose body of Oliver and throwing him over your shoulder is just pouring out just gouts of blood out of your wrist. Still the water around you is just this constant trail of red following you. Hey, that's exactly how much he was gone. Oh, never mind. You healed for 9, and he only had 7 lost. Okay. Anyways, as she's kind of murmuring these incantations, you feel the skin begin to kind of knit itself back together, which is very itchy and painful. But at the same time, you can't really focus on that at the moment. You've only got 2.5 minutes to go. Faith is already like outside the door with Peter and started to go around the hallway, leading to where the control room is. You guys are kind of roll. Just as simple because there's so much shit and now water on the floor as well to not jump or to not trip. Roll let's just say an athletics for running basically on Peter.
All right. Athletics, you said?
Yep. Basically just running to not trip over things. Yeah, that's fine. As just as long as it was above a 5, let's say. Yeah, you kind of round the corner and you see outside this in the hallway that you guys came in from. Basically, you guys had come through this other room, but outside of that, where this other hallway is, more of the ducting has collapsed down. Maybe it was attached in some way to the ones that Legion had ripped down, and missing that support, it had fallen down. But you kind of make your way jumping over that out of the water and then back in when you jump back down. And Faith is kind of buzzing along over top all of this. By the way, you think how strange it is in the moment that Faith is embodying a spirit that is dead. You know that from what she pieced together. But Ophelia did not seem interested in taking Faith, and she did seem interested in taking Maureen, and you're kind of puzzling over that in your mind as you're following her towards the end of this hallway that you knew where this was, basically, but she was kind of, in case you didn't remember. But she leads you to the end. You kind of go in through this doorway. There's a control panel there. There's basically all of the buttons you need to know necessarily, or that Peter would need to know specifically. Roll a wisdom check to see if he remembers how to use them. You got about a minute left.
All right, wisdom check under abilities. Gotcha.
Yeah, the abilities on the left side. There you go. Yeah, that's fine. Just needed to not be a 1. You see it, and it takes you longer than you're comfortable with, especially being as close to the wire as you are. But you're looking it over, and of course Oliver didn't label any of this shit, and you're kind of cursing him anyways, even though Ketis is just coming into the room behind you with it thrown over his shoulder. He didn't label any of these, and you're kind of just cursing him in your head as you're kind of looking over these, not touching any of the buttons or the levers yet, and then you finally remember, yeah, it's got to be this one, and you grab it and you kind of pull it back, and it's kind of a rocker level, so you kind of pull it back, and you feel the whole place begin to kind of slowly vibrate the same way that it did when he had engaged the thrusters earlier, and it doesn't seem like there's much juice left in them, but it's enough that it has kind of slowed the descent until you're just barely moving now, whereas before you were falling, maybe a foot a second, which would be disastrous as far as that crashing into the college. But you've kind of reduced it enough that you're kind of just slowly settling in, and you feel that you feel that the place begin to kind of rock and shake as soon as under the bottom floor of this place, which you guys are just above, basically, think of it like a basement almost, is beginning to touch down onto the surface, and it's not settled quite right. It's not docked the way it's supposed to be because it isn't landing exactly in the spot where it's intended to be docked, but you've kind of got it just in time to stop this thing. And it kind of begins to settle off until it's kind of tilted off to one side a little bit. It's probably, the floor has a good 10-degree slant, but you are now safely on the surface. Everything looks to be okay. You're not seeing any more pink crystal around. It looks like everything is just wet, which means that, a lot of this stuff is going to stop working here soon. But it feels like you guys have touched down, and you did not cover everything in pink crystal. What are you doing?
We need to get the hell out of here. Get my hand.
Yeah, we got to get his hand fixed up.
Yeah, you have probably, let's call it, so, an hour or so is generally the kind of cutoff point, pardon the pun, for reattaching a detached limb. So, you still have some time there. Obviously, it's painful, and the longer it goes along, maybe the less mobility you're going to have in that hand. But you guys were on essentially the first floor anyways, so you make your way off to where the exit is, that is now kind of when you make it to the doorway that would go through an airlock into the main college facility. You are instead looking at part of the moon surface, and it's kind of crashed into it a little bit, so there's enough room, but you have to kind of almost crawl. You have to settle yourself down underneath and move under this door because it's sitting at an angle, and a bunch of the moon dirt is kind of pushed in through the bottom of the doorway. But you kind of carefully make your way out through that and make your way to the airlock to get into the college. So you are now in the college. What are you doing?
find me, Tubes?
Going to Fantasy Costco?
Yeah. Where's that the guy that does it?
That's Fredgy, yeah. Fredgy's the
Yeah.
guy that runs the Fantasy
Couldn't
Costco.
remember his name. Yeah.
Okay. So you guys you're running then? Are you? I mean, you still got time,
Yeah.
but okay. All right. So as you're running past, you actually see Sebastian in the hallways, and he goes, "What the fuck did you guys do?" Because he's seeing you just covered in blood. The stump isn't pouring blood anymore, but there's just blood everywhere. And you know, everybody was panicked. Remember, you guys had left the Candle Nights party, the kind of afternoon Candle Nights party that was leading into the evening, when all of this stuff started. So it's you know, later in that same day, you know, about an hour later at this point. But the Candle Nights party is, you know, obviously pretty well stopped at this point. But everybody was panicked, thinking that this lab was about to crash into it, so they were all preparing things to try to mute as much of the transmutation as they could. You run in through the Arboretum, up towards where the kind of entrance is, rush in through the doors, and of course, as soon as you run in, but you're kind of halfway through the door, and Fredgy's inside and sees you guys coming in. It seems like the place is quiet otherwise, so he sees you running in, and he's immediately, you know, eyes go wide, and not a panic, but like in surprise, going, "What the? Like, where's your hand?" And you know, offering help. Like, you're still got Oliver over your shoulder. What are you guys doing? Carrie does offer at this point to go ahead and take Oliver for you.
All right, get him off of me. Tell Reggie, or ask Reggie if he can put my hand back on.
He looks down at the stump and he says, I mean, I can't grow you a new hand. Like, do you have it?
Get your hand
Yeah.
on your back.
All right, sorry. I guess I needed to pull it out, didn't I?
All right,
It's here.
so you're holding your right hand in your left hand and a stump with your, you know, missing hand. He says, shit, yeah, come on, let's back to the lab, let's go. And he kind of turns around and immediately starts kind of not running, but, you know, kind of a hurried jog basically back towards the back of the Fantasy Costco. You know, the you know, kind of warehouse area. You've never been back here before. You kind of rush back there, and you see, actually, as you guys are entering, Carrie's gone off, by the way. Carrie and Sophie took, and Faith, actually, the three of them, go with, to go take Oliver, you know, maybe to the infirmary or something like that. Something that's not necessarily within Fredgy's capabilities, but anyways, so he runs you into the back there. His lab, you immediately see, yeah, you would notice these just as you come in because they fill up so much of the room. You see that there's a row of 4 very large cylindrical tanks, similar to the kind of tanks that you see the Dellen's Cap in, except much smaller. They're only about 10 feet tall. And they're filled with a pale green liquid. One of them is not pale green, it's a dark green, so dark and cloudy, and you can't see there. There's something inside of it, but you can't see it. It's not moving. But you see those. You see, do you know what alembics are? What an alembic is?
No, I don't.
Think of it like Bunsen burners and beakers and things like that all over the place. Basically like a chemical lab everywhere. And in fact, these are things that Ketis is very familiar with because he, you know, has a chemistry background, you know, chemical background. But basically, they're just all kinds of different vials and shapes and sizes all over the place, different liquids of different colors, things like that, powders and pastes and all kinds of stuff. But he takes you back there. He says, I mean, I don't really have the equipment to do this, so I guess just, you know, put your hand, you know, sit down there. And he's kind of like, he's visibly grossed out by this. Which is a little strange, of course, but he's telling you to sit down at what looks almost like a tattoo chair, and you know, put your arm out basically, and he kind of takes your other hand, your right hand, he takes it from you, and is like, he's still like, you can tell that he's like not freaking out, but he's very grossed out by this. He doesn't like that he's holding a disembodied hand, but he kind of holds it, you know, in place, and he's kind of just very awkwardly kind of butting it up against the stump, and you feel this, and it feels painful because that, you know, the recently exposed nerves still feel something, and he's kind of butting it up against it in a very like banging Legos together that don't fit kind of a way, just kind of jamming it against that, and he's still awkwardly like not trying to, you know, not fully focused in the moment because he's so distracted by how weird the situation is, but he after a moment, you see him begin to, let me see, actually, what are I don't remember for the Greater Restoration what they are. Yeah, I know it's money. Yeah. So he sets the hand down, and you're now looking down at your hand, just sitting on the table in front of you, with your exposed wrist kind of directly in front of it, but the hand not moving. And he goes over to a shelf, and he comes back with a little sack, and he pours this sack out on the table there, and it's just this pile of dust, of very very bright shining dust, like reflecting light in all directions, like a rainbow of light coming off of it. But he sets it down, and he makes some kind of hand motions, not looking at the left hand that's doing this. He makes some hand motions over it while he's mumbling an incantation with his right hand kind of over your wrist, and he's holding your with his thumb and ring finger, or thumb and forefinger rather, around your hand, trying to hold it in place, basically. So basically his hand is covering where the connection would be, and as he's murmuring these incantations, yeah, that's fine. You begin to feel just way worse pain than losing it when the hand was taken off. You begin to feel what you would imagine like regrowing a hand to feel like, almost, where it feels like the wrist is sprouting out this new connection of network of nerves, which is just the most agonizing pain. Roll a Constitution check with disadvantage, actually.
Check or save?
Con. Or, you know what? Save is fine. Con save. Roll it with disadvantage, though. That's still fine. You feel damn close to passing out. Like everything begins to go dark. Like your eyes begin to get that kind of, filled with blood kind of feeling, where everything starts to go dark, like you're gonna black out. But you kind of just grit your teeth and hold on through it. And then Feji is still standing there with his hand over this for a second. He kind of very sheepishly and very slowly lifts his hand up, like covering it so that you can't see it, and he turns his hand to basically his right hand. He's turning it to his right so that his hand is blocking your vision of it, and looks down, and he kind of like almost looks surprised at himself for a moment, and then he pulls his hand away and he says, I think it worked. I mean, can you move that? And he, you can, like, he tells you to do so, and you're able to kind of start to move your fingers. It feels very stiff, feels painful to even try, but you immediately have to. You just have this innate feeling that you need to try moving it, and it feels like you have full mobility. It feels like you can move everything normally.
Cool. I'm done, thank you.
That's it. Just a regular kind of thank you for reattaching.
Yeah, yeah, thanks, bro. I'm just gonna give him take that hand and give him a little pat on the shoulder. I'm not gonna say anything. No, I'm gonna say thank you very much. Definitely saved us there.
When you pick that hand up to kind of go pat him on his arm or anything like that to say thanks, he shrinks away from it, like he's creeped out by that hand.
Cool.
But it looks like your hand is reattached. Everything looks like you're going to be okay. In fact, actually, not only that, but the center where the crystalline shape had already been, for not just from the second time, but from the first time when you touched it, looks like that's all gone. The hand looks normal now.
Sweet.
He says, he just gives a deep, deep sigh. He says, "Wow. I mean, I guess I didn't really know how that was going to go. This is going to sound really awkward, but in the event of emergency, maybe we need to be better prepared. How do you, to be fair, I'm really grossed out by this. This is not my forte. I'm not a physician. I'm not really in the medical field, but I mean, if something like this were to happen to you guys and put the entire mission of the college in jeopardy, that could be disastrous. Tell you what, I'll leave this up to the director. You guys can say no if you want, but I bet she'll make you do it. I would suggest that you guys, give me a vial of blood each, so that if we have some kind of a major problem in the future, that maybe I could do something with that."
I don't care. It's fine with me.
Okay.
Peter?
I'm a little apprehensive about that.
He says, I mean, look, I totally understand, especially, being familiar with what, the arcane arts can do with this kind of stuff, but, I mean, if you don't trust me, I don't know who you would, and like I said, I mean, look, I'll tell you what, I won't even go to the director with it, but I would really strongly suggest it, because if something goes wrong, we want to have as many options as we can. I mean, what if Ketis here didn't have that hand? How is he gonna, fight off the whatever things you guys have to make your way through to be able to get these things back?
I'm still going to be fairly reluctant, but if we can get word from the director, and it comes from the director, then I'll comply.
He says, "That's fair. That's fair. All right, guys. Well, I mean, I can't believe that worked. This is not my wheelhouse, but wow. I think I'm gonna take the rest of the day off." But he kind of, carefully and politely, helps you guys make your way back out. You are now back at the college. You have the Codicus ring that you need to turn in. You still have that other disc, of course. And the director will, of course, want to debrief immediately. So, what are you guys doing?
We need to get the items turned back in first.
Yeah, that's what the debrief is, so.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so you guys make your way to the director's office.
How are we doing with homeboy that's unconscious over there?
Carrie took him already. So Carrie, Sophie, and Faith took Oliver with them. So you don't have basically it's just the three of you right now.
Should we go check in with them, or?
They ran off to the infirmary, is what Carrie told you. So I mean, it's up to you guys. You can. They didn't necessarily need anything from you guys to take him to the infirmary, but it's up to you. You do need to get the ring turned in, of course, but it's up to you what you want to do.
What do you say, guys? Touch base and then turn in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So you're going to head to the infirmary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So you guys, it's about as far away as it can be on the college grounds, but you make your way over there. Carrie is standing outside. She's not smoking a cigar, but if you guys were on the surface, she probably would be. She just doesn't smoke usually up here on the base. But she's standing outside, arms crossed, leaning against the doorway. Basically, she's leaning against the wall next to the door outside the infirmary. One foot bent at the knee and the foot against the wall, just leaned against it. Just standing there, just kind of head down a little bit, just looking at herself, like pondering to herself. Basically, looks a little mad still, like it's just awkward in the situation here. When you guys approach. She looks up, she kind of smiles at you guys. She says, whoa, Ketis, is that, did he get that back on? Is that your hand? What happened? Yellow.
What?
Did you guys cut out?
No, he said he'd be back in just a second.
Oh,
he went to the bathroom.
Okay. It's fine. We'll hand wave over that portion of. Basically, she's surprised to see his hand is reattached, and gives him a big hug and an apology for having to hack it off in the first place. She still seems a little bit not perturbed, but she still seems concerned. I guess like she's eyeing him a little bit, not suspiciously, but in a way that says that she's not exactly necessarily 100% trusting that since he used it, that it's not going to affect him somehow. But she does have the awareness, at least, that these things don't appear to affect you guys so well. So, Ben, are you back?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's what I would have said. Yeah, got my hand back on. Thanks, Reggie.
Yeah. All right. So, anyway, so she still seems a little bit cautious that you specifically used it, and that's exactly what her job is meant to prevent. People are not supposed to use those, and if they do, then she normally has to hunt them down. You know what? Roll as you're kind of having this conversation without words with her, because you're looking at her and you can tell that that's what she's thinking, and that you were not supposed to have used that. On Ketis, roll a wisdom check, please.
All right.
Okay. As you're kind of realizing that that's what she's saying without saying to you, while she's kind of giving you a hug and apologizing for cutting the hand off, and just being happy that your hand is still there and reattached, you piece together a couple of things, some things that you think are very important in this moment. You realize that especially kind of thinking over today's events and what have happened recently over the past few weeks even, that everyone that has used these, and you're immediately thinking about this because you just used it, everyone that has used these Idrilim, with the exception of one person that you know of, only one, out of the, I think 5 people that you know have used one of these Eaterly, every single one of them has begun to kind of deteriorate. They begin to get sallow. The skin begins to get clammy and gross. They kind of begin to shrink in on themselves until they become very thin, and feel like they're almost not there anymore. And specifically, that has happened in the recent time that you've seen. You've specifically seen it recently in Shay. Hang on, I gotta find it again. 1 second. Kind of skipping past my notes and just improvising a lot of this, which is better practice for me, but it means I could be missing details. So, sorry, where'd my notes go? It's fine. It was at least Shay, though, and you didn't know his name. Yeah, exactly. You didn't know his name, but Yarno, and Oliver. You've seen the 3 of them just recently. All 3 of them had used these, and they look more and more evaporated and thin as time went by for all 3 of them. Now, thinking back over the people you had seen, you do for a fact know that one person used it and did not appear shrunken, and that one person was Jack. And it's been a long time, it's been some months, but you specifically met Jack in that basement, and he had been using the Oculus to build that mansion as like a means of defense to protect himself from Odim, remember? And he'd kind of been using that quite a bit for some time, and he still looked perfectly healthy. He still looked in fine shape. So you were thinking over this again while she was kind of probing you, essentially, for you just use this, what's going to happen now kind of thing. You're thinking over this like, shit, am I going to start to deteriorate as well? Thinking over the people that you know have used them, Jack coming up as the only one that did not. And you don't necessarily know differences as to why or anything else, but you do know that he did not seem to be deteriorated, whereas everyone else that he's used these definitely did. So anyways, you find Carrie outside, you have this kind of interaction with her. What are you guys doing?
Did we turn the item in yet?
No, you guys said you wanted to go to the infirmary first.
Yeah, then we need to go turn the item in. Did we check on Oliver yet and everything?
No, you're standing outside talking to Carrie.
Oh yeah, then we need to go in and do that then.
Right. You weren't gone long enough to have missed a session's worth of interaction. All right. So you step into the infirmary, you see Sophie's in there. Sophie's kind of standing on the opposite side of the door, inside basically, leaning against the wall similarly. Looks kind of bored and dejected. She doesn't seem to talk very much. Like, you guys have really never had a conversation with her that didn't include mostly grunts. But remember, the 2 of them did just lose their friend, Andre, the dwarf that tried to smoke a cigar inside the lab and got crystallized. So they did just, have a friend die. But Faith is over with... where did the name go? The doctor. It's a female doctor. Her name is Frep. Just a kind of a mousy looking human, very small woman. FREP. But anyway, she's kind of looking over Oliver. He's been laid out on a bed. It looks like she's taking various readings and things like that. He's got a thermometer in his mouth. What are you guys doing?
Gonna walk over, just kind of see what's going on.
Sure. So you step over there. Frep looks up. She says, "Can I help you? We're trying to, stabilize this guy. What's going on? You guys need help?"
Just came in to check on him.
Well, his condition hasn't changed. He's still unconscious. Whatever hit him gave him a pretty severe beating. It looks like, from what I understand, from what Carrie had told me, you guys saved him. So, good job there, because he's still alive and he wouldn't be without your help. So, I'm going to do what I can for him. But so far, he hasn't changed. I don't expect that he'll be out of this anytime soon.
Hey, that sucks.
Yeah, not much we can do. If there's anything we can do, let us know.
She says, "Well, there's one thing. I would need to go and report to the director anyways, and it sounds like you're heading that way from what Carrie said. So if you're going up to her, just let her know his condition. Tell him we've got him here, and as soon as he wakes up, I'll let her know. So pass that message along for me if you would."
Sure, we can do that.
All right. So you guys heading off to the director?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So you kind of make your way there. This is, again, about as far as it can be because you have to make your way back across the Arboretum and everything, back through the administrative offices and down towards her office. She is inside. The lights are a little bit dim. Drew is in there with her. You step in and there's immediately just a very heavy tenseness. Like, it's very tense in this room. You immediately can tell that there's something up with her, that she's not happy. She's not making eye contact. You step in, she barely kind of acknowledges that you're there. As soon as you kind of step in, though, and kind of announce yourself, she says, Drew, can you excuse us, please? And the little guy, the short little bald man, Drew, makes his way out and closes the door behind him, leaving just you guys in there. She's got a very solemn, measured tone. Rewind slightly. You guys give the ring, so you hand over the ring. He puts it on the cart. The cart Peter hasn't seen this before. Basically, there's a cart. Maybe he did. Basically brings in a cart that has an arcane cage essentially on it. So every time that you guys have turned these in, or that they have, they put them on the cart. He presses a little rune, and a cage of purple electrical bars essentially snap up around it like a dome up around, and he wheels it out. And then she asks him to leave. So anyways, basically you've turned it in. You no longer have the ring on you. You still have the null crowns, so you don't necessarily need them. It's up to you guys whether you've turned them in or turned them off or whatever else you were doing. But she asks Drew to leave. Very solemn, measured tone. She's kind of looking down, not making eye contact. She says, I'll be quick. I know you've had a long night. She takes a deep breath. There it is. She says, without looking up, she says, what have I done to lose your trust?
Nothing. We haven't lost any trust in you. Or faith. I mean, have we?
That I can think of. She hasn't really done anything.
She looks up at Peter. She says, Peter?
Oh, I'm going to be an instigator. I'm going to stare at her because something's going on with her and Oliver. She knew something was going on with Oliver, so I'm going to call her out and say that you haven't been transparent with what's going on around here.
You see her mouth move a little bit, like she's, like a jaw kind of going off the side, like she's pondering what you've said. She kind of nods slightly, and then looks between the three of you. She says, all right, well, I was listening in, and I heard you parlay with that gray coat again after I explicitly asked you not to. She sighs. She's looking down at her desk and shakes her head. She reaches over to a drawer. She pulls out this little small crystal orb. You guys have actually seen her use it before, just in time to time when she needed to show you something. But she pulls this orb and sets it out on the desk. She speaks an incantation. You guys see a series of holographic images beginning to appear in the space above the desk. Between you and her, they're displaying different images that are of destroyed towns and cities and massive fields that are charred and blackened, and there's just image after image of these like different terrible carnage things. It settles on what looks like almost a peaceful town, and at first it almost looks like this is not a terrible carnage, and then you see it's painted very clearly in these kind of wrapped red and white stripes covering everything. She says, this is the settlement of Armos, where a 7-year-old girl found the Caudicus ring and turned the city into peppermint candy. 714 people were killed. The scene shifts, shows a mile-wide crater, just a otherwise open field, but there's just massive craters. There's this big bowl in the earth. She says, this was the village of Greenhold, where a warlord used the Oculus to manifest a small black hole, which annihilated the entire town, killing 1,152 people. There's another shift. She says, this used to be the archipelago of Moonshay, which drowned in 3 minutes under the weight of a storm summoned by the Vine Lash. 2,519 people killed. There's another shift. She says, certainly this one looks familiar. Certainly you recognize Vandalin and the other cities that have been destroyed by the Firestorm Cloak. 8 settlements total destroyed, over 12,000 dead. She pauses for a second. She says, I swear to you, I am trying to stop this from happening, and we're over halfway done. But if you give up on me now, if you stop trusting me now, we've already lost. She says, I need to know, are you with me? What can I do to make this make sense to you?
Again, I didn't think that. I guess I don't follow the story all that well. But I swear I'm not trying to be a jerk. I honestly do forget a lot of it until I get reminded. But I mean, I don't remember questioning her on anything.
So out of character here, out of narrative for a moment. What she's referring to specifically is that you guys, you didn't necessarily talk to, in that you didn't converse necessarily with that gray coat.
Yeah, he didn't. He just follows us. Well, not necessarily follows us around, but we can't help the fact that he appears in situations where we're at.
Yeah,
it's not like we're calling him.
Yeah. But the difference in this specific case, you didn't tell her about it when you guys debriefed.
Yeah. Okay.
And you didn't for the time before that either. She only knew about it because she found out from Carrie or whatever the case was. Different situations. But basically, you guys didn't tell her. And she had specifically said that if they ever show up or anything like that, you need to tell her immediately, and then don't communicate, don't risk giving up what's happening basically, or what the college is doing. So anyways, that's what it is that she's mad about, is that not necessarily that, but this is now the third time since she's asked you not to, that you guys have met this guy, this apparition, and not said anything or avoided conversation with it. But she sighs again. She says, just looking at the kind of the weight of the day's events are just clearly visible on her face, and that she's kind of, her shoulders are slumped and everything. She says, look, I'm sorry. She says, we're getting so close. I mean, we really are. And I don't mean, look, we're getting close to finishing our goal, and I guess we're getting closer as people. And it's just, look, I have my own trust issues as well. Peter, your attempts at probing my mind earlier, that didn't help matters. I mean, if you say it was a mistake, I believe you. Just please, we can't allow these graycoats to learn of what we're doing here. If they learn and they spread that information, it could undo everything.
I'm going to pipe up and say, what is everything? What is your end goal?
Removing these things from existence. I mean, you, more than anybody, know now. You've been here for 2 years. You've seen the kind of devastation these things cause. If they are made aware again, and by they I mean the people of the planet below, if they know about these things again, it would start all over. It'd be a whole new series of these extinction events over and over and over again.
Is it wise to gather all these things in one place?
I gotta say, maybe not, but the alternative doesn't seem so good either. It seems worse, really. And we're not just gathering them. I mean, we're specifically gathering them to destroy them. Roll an insight check, all three of you.
And then why do we have to have all of them before we can destroy them? Have we destroyed the ones that we have, or do they just get stored away? Okay,
so you, Sako, was that insight check just now? That 14? Did you already roll it?
Yeah, just
okay, cool. All right. So as you guys have understood it, they've been being destroyed throughout. As you guys bring them in, Drew is taking them off to be destroyed. That's what you've understood it to be. With the way that she just said that, though, and you guys, I'm gonna hold you to this. This is important. The only one who got an inkling that maybe that wasn't 100% true is specifically Navarra, and that means that Kitas and Sako cannot act on that information. Only Navarra.
Okay.
Because her roll, you rolled a 9 plus 3 is a 12. Sako got a 14. She got a 20. So Becky, you are the only one that got an inkling that maybe she isn't telling the whole truth in that she said that they're being destroyed. Okay?
Okay.
So, I mean, you're welcome to do with that as you will, but it doesn't mean that they're not being destroyed. It means that you felt like what she said there, that she was not telling you the whole truth. That does not mean that they're not being destroyed. That's important. So after she says that, and the little conversation with Sako there, she says, look, you understand, I'm not trying to be cold. It's just, I have to keep a professional distance from my staff members. once, look, not all that long ago, I lost dear friends, the kinds of friends you only find once in a lifetime because of a choice that I made. I wish I could, go race carts and solve murder mysteries, but I have to leave that to you guys to keep our work up here moving forward. Just trust me, please, and once we get this done, we can all go on adventures that don't have world-ending consequences. She says, in the meantime, though, really, you guys are right. I mean, it's too tense, and we could probably all use a break. So, look, maybe I'll schedule us a little off time down on the surface. And she kind of trails off, thinking. She says, "All right, look, that unless you guys have anything for me, that'll be all. I mean, thank you, each of you, for everything. And again, I'm sorry for kind of coming down on you this way." Do you have anything else for her?
I don't think so. What are you guys saying?
No, because I'm
Peter's just gonna keep himself reserved.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait to tell them about the fact that I didn't think she was telling me the whole truth about it until after we're not around her.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, how we'll handle that is specifically that you can tell them that that's how you felt by it. But both Kiedis and Sako were seeing her and hearing every word the same way, and they didn't necessarily feel the same way. So they know that you felt that way, but they don't necessarily have felt that way from their interaction. They just are, taking your word on it, if that makes sense. Does that work?
Okay.
So that's basically, you telling them that doesn't mean that they immediately feel also suspicious. It just means that they know that you feel suspicious, and that's totally up to them on how much they trust your intuition of that kind of thing. So basically that's how that works. So you can't necessarily, immediately just go all out that you think she's lying, kind of a thing, because it was a very subtle thing in one interaction out of, hundreds, is all. So, all right. So you guys have stepped out. You're now outside the administrative offices. What are you doing?
Fancy Costco time and rest.
Yeah, and then I need to brew up some more Stratos when we're resting.
Yeah, you guys
Before going
actually, that's probably the most burned out you guys have ever been as far as using up your resources. Kiedis used both of his spell slots. He used that ring, used most of his Stratos. The only thing you still had basically was you had 3 maneuvers, and then just your regular melee. And Navarre used almost all your spell slots, didn't you?
Yeah, I think I have 1 4th level left.
Yeah, you guys have burned way through it. All right. So what are you guys doing?
Fantasy Costco?
Fancy
Alright.
Costco.
Restock?
Yeah.
Barrows, all that shit.
Okay. All right. So you guys step on through. Freggie is still there. He's still he's won't look. So the weirdest feeling of it is that it's not that he won't look you in the eye; it's that he won't look you in the hand. Like, it's specifically averse gaze to not look at your hand, which is a very strange, feeling. You wouldn't normally notice something like that. But you've now stepped inside. What are you guys doing? He says, "What can I help you guys with?"
Well, I need some arrows.
He says, "Well, by all means, help yourself. You're not charged for arrows, so." You guys looking for anything in particular?
I'm kind of checking.
Do I have enough components to? I got plenty of sage root. Is that what I need? The only thing I need to brew Stratos? A sage root?
Wild sage root, yeah.
I've got
yeah,
10.
he's well, that's fine, but he can help you with a stock of that too. So, but in fact, the stuff you have by now is probably pretty badly dried out, and you need it to still have a little bit of suppleness to it. But I mean, he has enough stuff to help you brew it up. So go ahead and roll 3 alchemical checks, 3 failures. Ooh,
Seriously?
not on that one.
That's fitting.
Okay. One more. Yeah, that's fine. All right. So you got 2 full vials.
Okay.
And the last vial, you botched everything in it. He says, "I can help you make some more tomorrow. Just, I don't have enough time right now." So you've got 2 full vials now.
Cool. Tom,
Okay.
thank you.
He says, "Sure thing. Least I can do." You still need to refill your ring. Presumably, you can't do it today because you don't have any slots left.
Yeah.
But are you guys, looking to buy anything? What are you guys doing in the Costco?
Did you guys need to pick up anything?
I was just kind of looking for resources. I don't think I need to buy anything as long as I have the gold. Is that right? For spells, sorry.
Oh,
Did
as
any
far
of
as
us pick up
materials?
anything we need to sell?
Peter picked up a pile of gems, of chunks of gemstones, which is worth about 1,200 gold.
Yeah, and have we determined that those gems are just regular run-of-the-mill gems?
Yeah, they are totally inert and safe.
All right. Could I sell the gemstones, but split the gold between the three of us?
Yeah. He says, yeah, that's no problem. I'm just going to give you guys the gold. You can do with it whatever you want.
That works.
He's looking over them with magnifying glasses. I don't think I've ever seen gems this perfect before. I mean, yeah, they're chunks and little bits and pieces and everything, but I mean, once these are cut and made into stuff, these are going to be fantastic. Like, these are about as flawless as they can be. You guys, of course, know that they were grown using the Codicus ring, but they're totally inert. The virulent trait, I guess you could say, of the tourmaline that was made was not because of the Codicus ring itself. So, alright, I will add the gold for you guys. Give me 1 second. Alright, there you go.
Alright, I think I'm good then. I don't need to actually physically buy materials, I just need the gold to have the materials for my spells, right?
So generally yes, but the only ones that will matter is the ones that say that. So basically, if it's a regular spell that just says, a material component, but it's not consumed, so it'll have the $sign, but it'll say that it'll say that it isn't consumed, or just won't mention it. In those cases, you will just count that you have those. Basically, the ones where it says it is consumed, that's where you would need to replace those things when you come back to the shop, and you haven't casted any of those.
Okay, so if it says that I require, let's say, 25 gold worth of jade dust, do I physically have to have the jade dust on me, or just
You
fine?
already have that on you right now, unless it says that it's consumed in the process. Like, for example, if you look at Find Familiar, it'll say something just like that. The Find Familiar says 10 gold pieces worth of charcoal, incense, and herbs that must be consumed by fire in a brass brazier. If it says it's consumed, then you need to go and get more fire, or coal, incense, and herbs. If it says it's not consumed, then you guys went and bought this stuff last time, and you just have them in your pack. So the jade dust, if the jade dust does not say that it's consumed, like for vitriolic, is that the vitriolic sphere that you're talking about?
I was looking at some 6th level stuff, and I think it was disintegration or something around there.
Gotcha. Yeah, if it says it's consumed, then you'll need to buy enough of it. Like, you'll need to buy 3 casts worth or whatever. Otherwise, I'm just just count that you guys have them.
Gotcha. Then I'd like to buy 30 gold worth of charcoal, incense, and herbs.
Okay. And I will put that in there for you. There we go. All right, that's all set. Anything else in the Fantasy Costco?
I'm good.
Yeah, I don't think we need anything else. Well, I don't.
I don't think.
Okay. All right, then. As far as like quick interstitials and that kind of thing, what are you guys doing to kind of kill time? I guess because basically you don't have an assignment at the moment. You have the rest of the day free. Your evening. It's basically coming up towards evening anyway. So you guys doing anything in particular?
I'll keep training just to keep my skills up during the time. I want to read my alchemy books a little bit more too.
Okay. For that, roll an intelligence check. Just a flat intelligence check.
Okay. Boo.
Yeah, these are pages you've read tons of times. You're not really picking out anything new or interesting. Basically, it's all, just the same things. But at the same time, it feels good to kind of, reread something that came from a simpler time for you. The life wasn't as complicated when you were just back in Auburn and reading this book. But it still feels good.
Yeah. Cool.
What's Navarro doing?
I'm definitely going to be reading my tome.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Okay. Were you were gonna go visit Sebastian?
Sorry, you cut out for a second. Do what?
You were gonna go visit Sebastian?
The guy that's, yeah, Talon's cap guy.
Okay. All right. So you, you know, the three of you kind of split up, basically, kind of going your own ways, just to finish the rest of the day after a pretty hectic afternoon. But you kind of make your way up to the, you know the way up there. You've been there plenty of times. Usually, it's not escorted, but with other people. But you make your way up there to the. Where's that? Why is that? There they are. All right. Sorry. Make your way up there. Sebastian is in his usual place, up with Cetus. He sees you entering. He says, "Hey, Navarro, it's good to see you. What can I do for you?"
Just wanted to come up and see how you're doing and check on the Dallon's cap.
He says, well, I mean, the normal. It's still struggling every day with what it means to be remembered, and writing all of these things that it feels like nobody's ever even going to know about, and that's, I don't know, it always makes me a little morose, a little sad, I guess. But I mean, Cetus here, he seems to be doing okay. Lately, it's, I don't know, it's getting a little weird almost. And as he's saying this to you, you hear that the Dellon's cap begins to kind of repeat these notes over and over again. It's only a few. And he's kind of, he didn't start this until you came up, and as soon as Sebastian hears the Dellon's cap just making these sounds, he says, yeah, I mean, he's been doing that. He just keeps, I mean, I'm saying he, obviously I don't know if it's a he or not. We don't really know much about these things, but he does this. Like anytime I try to communicate with it, remember when you came up here before and he kind of started singing a little bit? He just keeps doing this. Like, it's that, basically. Like, he started it then, and every once in a while since, he just keeps playing these same notes over and over again. It's about 7 of them. So, I don't know. What do you make of it?
Oh. Can I touch the glass like I did last time?
Sure. So you bring your hand up to it, and as soon as, like, your hand is not even before it even touches the glass, like, as it's coming up to it, you see one of the tentacles that is floating, somewhat in the distance, kind of behind it, snakes up and just immediately snaps up to the glass and like anticipating that where you're about to touch it, and it touches it at the same time you do. Which, I mean, you've never seen these things move very fast before, but you immediately roll a nature check. You're not reading too much into it beyond that. It definitely wants to communicate. It feels like it's trying to communicate. It just, they don't think in the same way, and doesn't have any way. There's no shared way to communicate. It doesn't have fingers. It doesn't have hands. It doesn't have a voice to speak. It doesn't have any shared level. There is there's no equator. There's no place for you guys to be able to meet in the same place to be able to have any kind of a communication. But you feel like it definitely wants to communicate, and it almost feels sad that it can't. But it keeps repeating those same notes over and over again. Those, you're not able to really make any sense of that. And Sebastian, it seems like he's been trying. You see that the little desk that he's sitting at is covered in these notes that he's kind of scribbled out what these notes are over and over again. Like maybe he's trying to, turn them into math. Like he's tried to translate them in any way, shape, or form to make them make sense, and doesn't seem like he's come up with anything so far.
Is Peter able to kind of look for a pattern or look for some type of a message?
Peter's not there.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. All three of you guys kind of went your separate ways. For the end of the night, basically, and this is where Navarro chose to go. This, by the way, is what I texted you the other day to ask you what Peter was doing in his downtime. This is that. So sometimes during these interlude sessions, basically between missions, for minor character development and that kind of stuff, I leave it kind of up to you guys, but you tell me what it is your character's doing, and I'll just improv around it to help you build your characters up or advance the story or whatever the case is. In this particular case, Navarro's had a couple of interactions with the Dallon's cap so far. So. Sorry. Anyways, what are you doing, Becky?
Um. Jeez.
You do feel... Sorry, did you cut out? I wasn't sure if you were saying something there. Did you say something?
No.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of what I'm gonna do.
You do feel calm being up here. It's kind of nice being next to, an animal. It may be alien in air quotes here, meaning, strange, not necessarily alien is from another world. Although that could be true too, you just don't know. But you do feel a certain level of comfort basically up here. Maybe you just, if you were going to sit around and read your book anyway, maybe this is a good place to do it, just because you do feel like at least there's an animal here, a real one, not just a little furry fake creature that follows Sako around, or Peter around. So.
Okay, well, I guess I'll just ask Sebastian if I can stay up here for a bit and just kind of hang out and read my book.
He says,
try and help him figure out what the notes are.
He says, well, sure, of course. It's always nice to have company. He says, that book, I've been meaning to ask you about that, by the way, especially when you've, come up here. Like, this may sound a little weird. I don't know. Maybe this isn't normal. I'm not really much for the arcane arts myself, but he says, sometimes when I spend a lot of time up here with Cetus here, I start to feel like I can see auras around things. And at first I thought it was just, being tired and working too much, and I kind of brush my eyes, that kind of, the way you're brushing the sleep out of your eyes kind of a thing. I'll do that a little bit, and then they'll go away. But if I just, keep staying up here for a little while, I start to see those auras again. And at first, like I said, I didn't think much of it, but the more you guys come around, the more I seem to notice that it's not just around random things. It seems like it's specifically from around, things with some magic to them, some power to them. And you mentioned that book there, and I noticed it on your head the last time you came up. And like I said, I didn't say anything at the time, but I mean, you do know that there's something to that, right? That thing is that glows more than anything else I've ever seen. That's for sure. I mean, have you had it checked out?
I looked over it a little bit. I mean, I know some stuff about it, but not everything.
Sure. I mean, far be it from me to tell you, what your items are for. But I gotta say, I mean, that thing, it seems just on those glows, it's got to be special. It's got to be important. Maybe you should, have somebody take a look at it.
Okay, who would you recommend I go to?
I don't know. I mean, it's certainly not me. Anybody that knows better about, arcane energies, I guess. Maybe Freggie or I mean, your friend Peter, he probably knows about them.
Okay. He
says, but anyway, I mean, yeah, pardon the interruption there. I was just curious, but yeah, by all means, go ahead and have a seat here. And he offers you a chair next to his table, so you can go over your book or help him with his notes or whatever.
Okay.
So what are you doing? You gonna sit there and just finish the night off, just reading over your tome and everything?
Yeah, I think I'll just stay there, finish the night there.
Okay. All right, then on to Peter. What is Peter doing?
Peter's going to be spending some time kind of figuring out and learning about different types of planes and divination magic. I guess he's going to kind of get back into that.
I'm studying?
Yeah, studying about divination magics and planes, since things are starting to start up like that.
Okay. Are you doing this where? In your quarters?
Well, the lab is now defunct, I assume. Can't go back there.
Well, your office isn't, though. So your office wasn't in that part of the lab. You have basically yours is part of the main college facility. So your office wasn't destroyed.
Okay, I guess I'll go there since that's the best option.
Sure.
But just more of a research on the different types of planes and things that we're starting to uncover right now.
Okay. So there's kind of a library basically that your office is attached to. So when you pass through, you notice Ango is in there. That he's got an arm full of books that is taller than his face. Ango's a little halfling. You met him, of course, when he came into the College of Service, which has only been, I think, a couple of weeks now. But basically, Ango is the one that's over the headsets, or over the stones, rather. Has kind of helped you guys, if you had questions on what is this and things like that. Basically, he's kind of your research assistant for everybody for the team. But anyways, you notice him as you're passing by through the library there, with, like I said, a stack of books that is kind of up above his head a little bit. And he's kind of walking off to a table there. So you go back and pull out a couple of books and start kind of researching over the planes. Do a flat intelligence check for me. Actually, before you roll it, specifically, what information are you looking for? Are you trying to answer any particular question, or just kind of get general knowledge about the structure of the planes and so on? What is it that you're trying to find out?
General knowledge of the planes and trying to find if there's a connection between all of them.
Okay. All right, go ahead and roll the intelligence check. Looking them over, this is you're kind of going tome after tome after tome, and this is not rudimentary information, certainly advanced, but it's still, although advanced, still below what you are already familiar with. You do, however, in going through all of it, you do find corroboration that you weren't necessarily as detailed on. You were kind of vaguely aware of, but you didn't necessarily know as thoroughly. But you do kind of corroborate the way Oliver described the structure of the planes and how they're interconnected. You can't find any way to validate specifically what he told you about the emerald, the emerald mirror that you used, basically, and you do still have that, by the way. The compact with the emerald in it, the flat emerald disc that you can see into another variable dimension. It's think of a multiverse theory, essentially. So as he had described it, basically you have all of these individual planes that are separated by thin layers, and those thin spaces can be at least seen through, maybe moved through, you don't know that, but at least seen through if viewed through another lens, and that's what that emerald is. So viewing through that emerald lens, it lets you essentially look through those thin places into alternate dimensions. So you do find ways, you find enough information there of historical documentation that does corroborate all of that, except specifically the thin places about using the emerald disc.
All right.
As you're kind of looking through these and beginning to get a little frustrated that, what you're looking for, you can't really find new information or things more advanced than this. By the way, through this, you're kind of, this is the moment where it's beginning to dawn on you, this specific moment, that there, in all of the knowledge of the world, is still not enough. That there's still information out there, that the collected intelligence of not just humans, but all the species of this planet still don't know enough. That you're basically beginning to come above the threshold that people out there are capable of understanding. They're basically you'll be 12th level at the end of this. Basically, there aren't that many people out there that are this capable, and yet there is still so far to go, and that makes it almost lonely. There's almost a lonely feeling to that you're kind of coming above what the rest of all species can do, what they're capable of doing, and yet you know that there's still so much further to go that you won't have peers to ask questions of anymore, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So anyways, though, as you're doing this research, you hear kind of a quiet knock, and you look up from your books, you look over to the corner there, and at first you look up to human height and there's nothing there, and you got to kind of look down a little ways, and you see that Ango is very sheepishly kind of his head poking around a corner of a bookshelf there, and he knocked gently on the bookshelf to get your attention. He says, "Sir, I don't mean to bother you, but could I have a moment of your time?"
Sure thing. What's going on, Ango?
So, look, I know this is very outside, very, very heavy question. I shouldn't even be asking this of you, but I gotta ask. I mean, look, I know what your specialty is, and I understand that, and I don't really have any arcane capabilities myself, but I've always been interested, and I was wondering if you could recommend me to anybody. Is there anybody maybe that could teach me the basics, so maybe I can start kind of learning, and maybe one day I'll be as good as you?
I would assume that you can come to me for some basics from time to time if you need some assistance.
Wow, really? Wow, I mean, I wasn't asking for that, but I mean, I certainly wouldn't turn it down. So, if you want to do so anyways, Ango will come to you from time to time to kind of learn some of the basics. So, let's just say we skip ahead half an hour and you've kind of gone over some of the basics of how it works. What are you starting him with? What are you trying to teach him to begin with? Just the very basics. Where give me some of that.
Just basic arcane history, arcane knowledge, the fundamentals.
Okay, so you're not going over practicality yet, not actually using any of it, but just showing over, some of the fundamental stuff. Then, right?
Yeah, fundamentals that kind of lead into just moral dilemma, I guess you'd say.
So he roll a let's call it charisma. Roll a charisma check. Yeah, it looks like he's responding well. He's picking up what you're laying down, and seems like he's understanding all this. He says, "Wow, sir, I mean, I can't believe that somebody of your rank and stature would even take an interest. I mean, really, thank you so much. Like, if there's anything else I can do, over the stones, like if you need help at all, I mean, this is where I live. I stay right here in this research lab. So, if there's anything out of here that you need, you just let me know and I'll find it for you."
Sounds good.
And he kind of makes his way off. So Peter's just continuing his research.
Yeah, just basic research. I think it's too early to call in a favor from Ango.
Well, he will continue to do that for you at any time. He already was anyways, but he'll kind of make sure to take special care if there's something that you specifically asked for, since you've kind of offered to kind of go over some of the basic levels of arcane arts. We'll say that over the kind of basics of this, that you did pick up that he has some aptitude for it already. Like, he's definitely capable. He just never had any training. So maybe the halflings don't necessarily have the destructive tendencies that humans do. So they don't really have the kind of forced structure around it the way that like the humans required, or most species even require training for. So the way that you were forced into training, his people don't necessarily have that, just because they don't lean towards the destructive areas. So, and anyways, you did definitely sense that he's got some capability there.
Sounds good.
All right. So yeah, you kind of keep looking through this, trying to find more relevant information about the planar structures and so on. G, are you back? Ben?
Yeah, I've been here the whole time. I was muted because I was up walking around. So.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right. So, did you guys have anything else you wanted to do? It's basically the end of this day, maybe even the next day, but basically the end of that night is our next scene. So, is there anything else you guys wanted to do before that?
I don't think so.
Okay, so you guys going off to bed then?
Yeah, I definitely need some rest, I'm sure by now.
All right, so you guys make your way back to your bunks. Now that it's been a little bit of time since Kiedis and Navarro were in the the previous bunkhouse, basically where Robbie's bunk was, and you're not passing the door that's covered in essentially police tape. You're not seeing that anymore, so that doesn't come to mind every time, but still every once in a while you think about Robbie and like what he must have done, that he's still locked up in the brig now, where we're talking like 4 months later at this point. But just it comes to mind for just a brief second as you guys kind of make your way back to your bunks, and then so you make your way back. Everybody's kind of going to rest to get their sleep in. Thinking over a little bit how the director had mentioned that she was going to plan like a vacation for you guys, which sounded very out of character and a little bit strange, but just kind of thinking over the day's events and everything. But specifically, you guys, Navarra and Peter, you guys kind of drift off to sleep. You guys don't really have any difficulty for it, but Keita specifically, just tossing and turning, just trying and failing over and over again to find sleep in the middle of the night. The kind of noise, the general din of the college, which is generally pretty quiet anyways, but was too loud for this to be audible for you at first. It eventually dies down enough until that kind of familiar background noise is just gone, and then you can hear the very slightest, quietest noise that's coming out of your backpack, like a voice almost. What are you doing?
Gonna open up my backpack and take a look inside. Not put my hands in there yet.
You don't want to go risking those hands?
Yeah, not yet. I just got it back.
So you open the bag. You confirm that it's definitely a voice. Like, you can definitely hear a voice coming out of there. It sounds like muttering, though. It's repeating itself on a loop. Like, it's a long loop, but you've kind of heard the kind of ups and downs, this cadence of this sound. And you open the bag, and now it's definitely a voice, and you can hear that it's looped itself. It sounds very distant and synthetic. Vaguely familiar at first. You kind of dig through. Do you dig through to pull out to look for it?
Yeah. No,
Put on gloves first or something?
No, I'll just go ahead and see if I can see what's making the sound.
So you dig through until until this basically the sound keeps getting louder and louder as you're digging, until you eventually pull out that mechanical disc that you'd retrieved from Maureen. But as soon as you've pulled it out, now you can hear that that's where the sound is coming from. It's still super quiet, so you kind of pulled it out. It's not covered by the other stuff in your bag anymore. You have to bring it up to your ear to hear what it says. But now you can hear it clearly. It says, "I'm so sorry, Oliver. What I saw inside the Cosmoscope was terrible. I can't live with that knowledge. I saw all of existence all at once. I saw a dark storm, a living hunger that was collapsing in on it and devouring and unmaking everything. But I'm telling you this because I saw something else in there, something that I have to believe is hope. In the midst of this empty storm, I saw a brilliant light that was carried by 8 birds flying tirelessly from the storm, shepherding this light away from the devouring emptiness. I saw 8 birds." And then it says, "The twins, the lover, the protector, the child, the seer, the historian, the navigator." And then there's a pause for a second, and then it repeats the message again. That was the last part.
All right.
And that is where we will end the session and do your level ups. All right. There it is. All right. Do you guys have? Did you have a chance to look over your stuff? I think Sako did, right?
I'm sorry, you cut out there a little bit.
Did you have a chance to? Well, I guess who wants to go first? Who had the most chance to look over their stuff and has an idea of what they might want to do?
I know for me, I'm going to, well, I think I only have a choice of an ability score and improvement. Of course, going to go to charisma.